53 Curtis Boulevard in Eastlake. Mr. Chinello, excuse me, will you call the roll?
Mr. Merhar?
Here.
Mr. Roskis?
Here.
Mrs. Newyear?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Dr. Beal?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to have everyone say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1D, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Item D is the principal's reports. So they'll be providing information related to their buildings and other various information that I think you'll find beneficial. And first for us is Eric Fry. Eric Fry is the principal from North High School. And so without further ado, Eric, the show is yours.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson, Mr. President, members of the board. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to talk about some of the ways that we measured student growth this year. With the year without testing, so to speak, prevented us with a situation where we wanted to be able to show that the kids are moving towards the target that they're supposed to be moving towards without having those achievement tests. We were missing some data, but we feel like we put together at the different levels, the high school, middle school, and elementary school, a pretty good way to show that our students did indeed grow as expected this year. So one of the things that we did, first of all, the high schools both agreed to work together in terms of the design of how we would measure this student achievement, or this student progress, student growth for that matter. And we decided we would use student learning objectives, the SLO tests that they had given in the past. They had to change them around a little bit because the tests were given normally throughout the course of a full year, but we started collecting this data from January and through May. So each one of the disciplines was grouped, excuse me. In math, after 90% of the students reached their target growth measure. In English language arts, 86% reached that measure. In science, 94%. In social studies, 89%. And then in the electives, which would be all the other classes that don't fit into one of those cores, we had 94% of them reach their growth targets. Now, remember that growth is not the same as achievement. So what was given is a pretest in the beginning where the students had very little knowledge, but some had more than others. And then the test would then be scored based on that student's ability to grow from that point towards the end. So whereas, it's different than achievement where did everybody get a 70% or better, or did everybody grow as expected, depending on where they started. So what we're gonna do as action steps at the high school, we are very excited, as I'm sure our middle school and elementary school colleagues are to be able to get back to a sense of normalcy. And be able to focus on, what is it the kids are supposed to learn, know, or be able to do? How do we know when they know how to do it, and what do we do when they don't? And those three very important questions we're going to focus on through our Tier 1 instruction. We're going to look at how we're presenting the most basic lessons. We're going to expect that 85% of the kids are getting it that first time around. We're going to assess. We're going to use formative assessments. We're going to collect data. And then we're going to use that data to go on to the next step, which is Tier 2, which is what do you do when the kids that have already mastered it are ready to move on, but a good portion of the class needs some more remediation. And so that's that Tier 2 level that we're going to talk about. So that's kind of the high school plan going forward.
On to middle school, grades 6, 7, and 8. First, we're going to talk about the area of math and reading, and we'll focus first on math. At Eastlake, Willoughby, and also at Soy, we use the diagnostic tool called ExactPath. And what ExactPath does is it allowed us to get a baseline for students and to be able to compare them and rank them to their like peers throughout the nation. So that was a nice tool for us. Our baseline data in the area of math showed that 53% of our students scored at or above the 50th percentile. When we gave the post-assessment in the spring, 75% of our students scored at or above the 50th percentile. So 22% of our students were able to push into this 50th percentile or above. In the area of reading, using the same tool, ExactPath, as our assessment, for our baseline, 60% of our students scored at or above the 50th percentile, and in the spring, 73% of students scored at or above the 50th percentile. So 13% of our students were able to push into this range. Now, Mr. Stasso.
Thank you. So for Willoughby Middle School, our students at Willoughby Middle used a student learning objective assessment, which was provided at the beginning of the semester and then followed up at the end of the semester. And these student learning objective assessments were comprised of state standards. That's where the questions were derived from. And then at the completion of that test, for Willoughby Middle, for math alone, 70% of those students reached their target growth measure. And for ELA, about 66% of those students reached their target growth measure on their student learning objective assessment for Willoughby Middle School. And for all of the middle schools, this includes Soy, Eastlake Middle, Willoughby Middle, Willowick Middle, and Eastlake Middle schools. For all middle schools, for science, 84% of students reached their target growth measure with that student learning objective assessment. For social studies, 84% of all students reached their target growth measure for social studies. For phys ed, 96% of students reached their target growth measure. Art, 89%. For computer technology, 86%. And for music classes, 74% of students reached their target growth measure using these student learning objective assessments. And then we're going to discuss our action steps for the middle school level.
All right, so moving forward, so in order to make data-informed decisions, we will continue to use a variety of resources and tools to help us move forward. I know I spoke of ExactPath earlier, and ExactPath we will continue to use. We'll use it in the fall to get a baseline. We'll again, like I stated earlier, use it in the spring to give a post-assessment. This year we're actually going to layer in an assessment midterm as well, so that we could recalibrate and kind of determine if we're making the gains that we need to be making. Along with ExactPath, we're also going to be using benchmark assessments. One will be given in the fall, one will be given in the winter. These benchmark assessments are nice because they mirror the rigor of the state assessment, so that data too will allow us to kind of tweak and monitor where kids are so that we can make gains. Of course, your classroom assessments and the state data that we look forward to getting soon, we will also use that moving forward.
Okay, and something new that we are trying at the middle school level for next school year, now that we have more access to data, including the ExactPath diagnostics, the benchmark assessments, as well as state testing, we are going to be implementing what's called an IE period, which is known as an intervention enrichment period. And this is a class period where, using that data, we're going to grab students, look at the areas that they need to have the most growth on, what areas do they need to grow the most. And so we will be taking interventions such as reading fluency, reading comprehension, mathematical computation, focusing those target interventions during that class time. As teachers in the ELA and math areas, as we'll start with, we'll be looking at those students, using that data, and finding areas that we can get them to grow the most, and then reassess them at the end of next school year to see what kind of gains we can make with our students. And then furthermore, we are going to be implementing the Willoughby-Eastlake instructional model next school year, and our staff members will be trained on that. And so the model focuses on state standards, so each teacher will know exactly how the beginning of the lesson will start, the middle and end of that lesson, and each lesson will be comprised of all state standards, making sure we're focusing on high quality instruction for core instruction, again, all standards based for the middle school and high schools and all of Willoughby-Eastlake using the instructional model starting next school year. So we're looking forward to that. So I will.
Scott, what would you say to the question of our kids take lots of tests, and as a result of taking lots of tests, we're not focusing on teaching the curriculum, some would say. How would you, any of you, respond to that?
Well, I would also take a look at, too, with the new data we've started gaining with using ExactPath, like Ms. Dr. Blalock had discussed. And so we're now able to compare our students at a national level. And that's something we've never been able to do before. We're now comparing ourselves amongst other states, other schools, coast to coast. And so the data that we're getting now is so much more fine-tuned, and we have so many more tools in our toolbox now to help those students grow in the areas that we know. The data shows us they are maybe strong here, might need some help here. We have so much more to look at and focus on where they need to grow and what are these skills they really need to succeed. So I think the data we have now helps better prepare the students and it helps us really target and focus our instruction.
And if I could add to that, with the, you want the assessments to be more frequent but smaller, so that we can respond with valid, timely feedback to the kids in real time, so that instructional changes can be made as the year is progressing, and not the old model of teach, test, move on, teach, test, move on. We want to, teach, assess, reteach, assess again, reteach, assess again, and continue that model throughout the course of the year.
I will also say, ExactPath is one of the tools that we used this year, and it was new to us, and the teachers at Eastlake really dug into it to see what kind of data it could produce, and how can we provide interventions that are appropriate. One of the things ExactPath does also is it creates an individual learning path for kids so that they can make gains. And the teachers found that the instruction online was very appropriate. We're looking to layer in about it. Students were asking them to do about an hour in reading a week, an hour in math a week, which will be part of our intervention enrichment time that we're going to be offering. So the data is very valuable, and the more data you have, the more informed you can be about the decisions you make.
Right.
And the exact path and the math fluency, which I'm going to talk a little bit about, the teachers get the immediate feedback. So they're able to progress monitor right away. They don't have to wait. The feedback is there for them right now. So.
Right, and also us too sharing those results with the students too. They can see where they are. So it's not just us looking at it, it's they can see where they're on their own pathway and see their own progress and take control of their own learning. So it's, the data we have now really has helped in that area, taking control.
One question is, it seemed like maybe I missed that. Is there a reason we didn't use it in Willoughby Middle School?
We were all given an option as to how we wanted to measure growth, and Eastlake and Willowick and Soy chose ExactPath as a way for reading and math, and then we gave SLOs in the other areas.
Gotcha.
Yes, and then so next year we will all be using ExactPath
Okay.
at the middle school level, all 3 middle schools, 4 actually.
I don't have to talk now.
Yes, you do. You only wish, Kim.
Well, good evening. I'm the elementary representative, and we also used another online assessment called Map Fluency, which measures K-5 reading skills. So our kids in K and 1 should have shown a really strong foundational skill level, and that's based, I think, on our K-3 focus on literacy in our buildings. We have implemented Haggerty and Foundations with Fidelity, so we're seeing a very strong pre-reading skill set from our kids. And as you move to grades 2 to 5, you will see that most of our students are at or approaching grade level in the area of oral fluency and comprehension. Okay, sorry about that. So we've shown growth in our elementary schools at the pre-reading skills for K and 1 and also at the 2-5. Every elementary school across the district has shown that. And we also have used ExactPath, so I'm not going to really say too much about that to repeat. But if you look at the scores, we have these broke down into the individual schools. You'll see that everybody, this is 50 percentile or above. At the year, we started off in low, especially in the area of math. But if you look, everybody has shown growth. And what we're really happy about is the math scores. If you look, they were really, really low. And we're going to attribute that to our new Eureka math curriculum, which is a lot more rigorous. It's aligned to Ohio Learning Standards and our Ohio State testing. So our teachers have even observed a lot more problem-solving skills out of our students. So, you know, we started off the year, you know, it was a tough curriculum for the teachers to handle, but at the end, we saw a lot of huge gains and results. So we're really happy with the curriculum, and we hope that that trend continues next year. And these are the areas that we're going to focus on, kind of basically the same. I'll just go through them real quickly. Elementary, middle and high school. Strong core instruction with targeted Tier 2 interventions. We're going to increase the focus on data analysis and monitoring student progress, ensure the use of map fluency and exact path, and Colleen was just talking about the individual learning paths for all students. We're going to use our benchmarks and formative assessments to make instructional decisions. We're going to continue to support foundational skills with Hegarty and Foundations lessons. We're going to use authentic grade level reading and writing assignments. We're going to incorporate science and social studies text sets within the ELA block. We're going to increase student exposure to informational text. We're going to increase the focus on standards-based instruction, which you've heard with the other principles, mathematical practice, and teachers' content area depth of understanding. We're going to continue to use the Eureka Math and increase kids' problem-solving skills by following that explicit direct instruction that Eureka Math allows us to use. We're going to increase our use of math manipulatives and hands-on, which we didn't see a lot of this year. And I think inside the classrooms, because of the COVID protocols and procedures, we weren't able to do that. We're going to focus on consistent best practices, instructional practices in the classroom. And then the last line is kind of our overall arching goal in our elementary schools. Read, think, talk, write, every student, every day. And then Soy had a couple extra things that they were going to focus on. They're going to increase the collaboration and problem-based learning opportunities and rekindle the partnerships with local businesses and governmental agencies to raise the level of authenticity for the student learners. So, that's it.
Thank you again. I think it's important to note, as school board members, just how difficult a challenge it was to accurately assess kids, not lose sight of that during probably, I think it's fair to say, the most tumultuous school year in the history of education. So you guys did a great job. Thank you, and thank you for presenting this data.
Thank you.
Next item is the superintendent question and answer.
So at last month's meeting, we had several people that made comments and had questions, and we responded to many of those at that time. It's a reminder, I think, for all of us as we're able to discuss these matters in public meeting. And I'm very sorry, I apologize that there was at a point where an employee in the district was discussed in a disparaging way by people in the crowd. And moving forward, I would like to remind you that if you have concerns, there are avenues and available pathway to do that, and at a public meeting, that isn't one of them. So please email or call me, email or call any school board members, and we will address your comments or concerns. And then with respect to curriculum, there was no curriculum changes then, and there are no forecasted curriculum changes moving forward. So I just want to reiterate that.
Okay, next is the public comment section. The first thing, before we move to that, I would like to just tell or inform people that we, over the last week, board members have received several emails from people that thought we were taking action against the district employee, and that was not the case. The purpose of executive sessions are to share information in a forum that allows the board to discuss personnel records, gather information about pressing matters, discuss the sale of properties, discuss new employees recommended for hire. These are only a few of the examples of things that can be conducted in an executive session, but if there's any action to be taken on any employee, for example, dismissal, or it's always placed on a board agenda, it's always made with public knowledge, and it's also always voted in a public forum. So there were a lot of questions about that, and I just wanted to make sure that people understood that. And I'd also like to point out, however, that if there is ever a recommendation for the removal of an employee from the district, there are always serious factors that necessitate such recommendations, and there's just not a history of this district in the past of just asking people to leave. We always take great care to ensure that there are no other options. Next is the public comment section. Let me just get this pulled up real quick. So I'd like to thank any of the community members to come to speak at tonight's meeting. All speakers are asked to complete a public comment form and are reminded that they have 3 minutes as an allotted time to speak. That goes for a maximum of 20 minutes. As a matter of policy, all comments will be directed to the presiding officer. And if we can't answer your questions and we have your contact information, you will hear from a representative of the district that is knowledgeable in your area of question. In the interest of transparency, we'll try to give those answers again at the next meeting. So before speaking, please state your name, address, and any group affiliation that you have if appropriate. Mr. Chilo, who is our first speaker?
Marcita Ferguson.
Hello, how are you guys?
Good.
I'm going to try to keep this at 3 minutes. I'm going to read as fast as I can. I represent a lot of people who are not sitting here, obviously. One thing I want to say, I sent my daughter to the car and to lock the doors. It was so uncomfortable, as many of y'all that were staring at us as if we didn't belong here. So I think that that's something to be said.
Sorry you felt that way.
My name is Marcita Ferguson. I live at 66 Stockwell in Painesville, Ohio. I am the founder and president of Black Lives Matter Lake County, and I am here to speak on behalf of some of the black parents in this district after what happened at last month's meeting. As I indicated, I'm the president and founder, and I'm speaking for parents of black children, as we are 9,100 of the 230,000 residents in Lake County. And that is a real fear for our safety, as I just indicated about with sending my daughter back out to the car. First, I want people to understand what critical race theory is. I have a master's in business. I have a bachelor's in legal. I do a lot of work in advocacy for black families. Critical race theory is an attempt to understand the law through the lens of race, and it emerged out of critical legal studies. It is not something that we are asking to be taught in schools because kids cannot understand or comprehend how to digest that information. There are two big pillars of this. The use of counter stories, which is looking at the world through the eyes of black people. We see the world absolutely differently. And then racism is being woven into the fabric of this country and is indetractable from everything that is done. You have to have an understanding that there is another way of looking at the world, the lived realities of black people. Now on to the meeting. First, Superintendent, with all due respect, when you continue to say that you had challenges and challenges, when I watched that video, it sounded like the black families were the challenge. We are not the challenge. Society is the challenge. The gaps and disparities are the challenge. To say that the challenge was the families, and I'm sure that was not your intent, but that was the impact that so many black families felt, that we are moving into this community and we are now the challenge. Betsy spoke on there not being an adjustment in the school districts for her as a descendant of immigrant families, but I'd like to point out the significant difference of choosing to come to a country rather than being enslaved and brought to this country. And then with barrier after barrier piled on top of your culture of people to keep you at the bottom of a caste system. That is significantly different than an immigrant family moving here and starting to build a life. Betsy also spoke on the social and emotional well-being not being addressed in school. And I thought it was quite odd because she said she was a child psychologist. I manage a probation department for a juvenile court. And we know that the social and emotional well-being of kids is impacted by every experience that you have. So to say that we don't want the school districts and these amazing teachers to be able to impact our kids in a positive way just doesn't make any sense. I want to also talk about, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, 3 minutes are up.
Okay.
Thank you for speaking. Mr. Trinella?
Nancy Perillo.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Nancy Perillo. My address is 38524 Wood Road in Willoughby. I have two students that have gone through the district. One is still in 8th grade. They're both adopted. One is black and is 21. One is biracial and is 13. We adopted them both. And I want to piggyback on the speaker who spoke before me. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what critical race theory is. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what white privilege is. All right, and I've had to learn all of this raising two black children. One of them is in contact with his birth brother in Akron, who was adopted to another family. So through them, through the school district I work in, which is predominantly black, I would like to speak on behalf of all children who come from a minority, whether it's Asian or Jewish or black or Hispanic or anything. What white privilege really should be called, I think, is white advantage. And what I think people don't understand is, because I talked to somebody after the last board meeting out in the parking lot who said, I'm not privileged. I worked hard for everything I had and I've done everything, and I'm not privileged. I've worked hard. It's not that you're privileged or that we're privileged. It's that when we were born into a situation with a skin color that we had no choice over, just like children of color are born with a skin color that they have no choice over. My children, my 13-year-old's brothers are visiting from Akron. I'll try to keep this short because I have one other issue I want to talk about. They're 13, 14, 15, 3 young black boys staying at our house. They're coming this week. Last time they were here, one of them got lost. Midnight, they were out riding their bikes around in the community. I now have to worry about, because they're black, are they going to get pulled over? Are they going to be harassed? Are they going to panic when they see policemen coming? No matter what we teach them, this is their life. These are their experiences. And I think we need to, as a school district, look at how can we teach these kids other people's history. It doesn't mean that whites are good and blacks are bad, or that if blacks get rights that whites don't. That's not it. It's about covering history from many different perspectives, and so that my children could feel safe here in this district as well. The last thing I want to address real quick is I'd like to know what is going on with Mr. Keller, principal at South High School. I know there is a lawsuit that he has filed for harassment against Steve Thompson.
Well, again, that we are not able to talk about personnel matters during a public meeting, but if you'd like to email the board members, we'd be happy.
I will, and I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention that I know what's going on. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Trinello, are there any other speakers?
No, they're not.
Thank you. Okay. Next item is approval of the minutes. First, the approval of the minutes of May 10th, 2021. Do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
Mr. President,
Mr. Merhar?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from May 10th.
Thank you, Mr. Merhar. Do I hear a second?
Mr. President, I will second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Roskis. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Trinello?
Mr. Merhar?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. New Year?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Next item, item 2B, is the approval of the minutes of May 25th, 2021. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I move to approve the minutes of May 25th, 2021.
Thank you, Mrs. Newyear. Do I hear a second?
Mr. President,
Mr. Jones?
I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. The next item on the agenda is the treasurer's.
We have to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Mr. Trinello?
Mr. Merhar?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. New Year?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Next item is the treasurer's report. Mr. Trinello?
Number 3, letter A, is the financial report for the month ending May 31st, 2021. They do look a little different because we have a new accounting system. I want to say kudos to my staff for doing an awesome job changing accounting systems a month ago. So Nancy's or Kathy's here. I want to say thank you. You guys really stuck together and made that change, and I appreciate that. So they will look a little different because it is a new system. But we are containing our expenses and we are on target with our revenue, so we should be very pleased with where we are financially. Letter B is a renewal levy resolution, and that is a renewal levy, and that would be on the November ballot.
Okay, so that item does require a separate vote. Do I hear a motion to approve item 3B, renewal levy resolution?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mrs. Newyear.
I move to approve item 3B, renewal of the levy resolution.
Do I hear a second?
Mr. President,
Mr. Jones?
I'd like to second that motion.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Charnello, what is the size of the levy?
$8,750,000.
And this is a renewal of
Of a previously passed levy. It is a 10-year levy, and it is a renewal.
thank you.
No increase in taxes.
Any other discussion? Mr. Charnello?
Mr. Murhar?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Newyear?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 5-0. Letter C are the fiscal 22 permanent appropriations. This is for next school year. This is to establish a budget ahead of next school year. And since our fiscal year changes July 1st, we do it at the June board meeting.
Do I hear a motion to approve item 3C?
Mr. President, I will make a motion to approve item 3C, fiscal year 2022 permanent appropriations.
Thank you, Mr. Roskis. Do I hear a second? Mr. Jones?
Mr. President, I second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Charnello?
Mr. Murhar?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Newyear?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 5-0. Letter D is the NWACA contract. This is the Northwest Ohio Computer Association. They supply us with fiscal support services and our state software accounting system.
Do I hear a motion to approve item 3D, NWACA contract?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mrs. Newyer.
I move to approve item 3D, NOACA contract.
Thank you, Mrs. Newyer. Do I hear a second? Mr. Murhar?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Murhar. Is there any discussion? Mr. Charnello?
Mr. Murhar?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Newyear?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Mr. Charnello?
Letter E is an amended contract with Farmers National Bank. This is to encapsulate our CDs that we have with them, as they were not included originally with our prior depository agreement.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve item 3E?
Mr. President,
Mr.
I will
Roskis.
make a motion to approve item 3E, amended Farmers National Bank depository agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Roskis. Do I hear a second? Mr. Murhar?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Murhar. Is there any discussion? Mr. Charnello?
Mr. Murhar?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Newyear?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Mr. Charnello?
Letter F is the medical mutual renewal. This contract renews on July 1st, and there was a lot of back and forth going on, as evidenced by Nancy Knack in the first row. And we are renewing with medical mutual, and that is up for your vote.
Thank you.
It is important to note, I think as well, that we did retain medical mutual, and by, at least you'll see in forwarding our documents, our agenda items to be approved by the board still remaining, that though that increase was significant premium increase for all employees and administrators. So this is not something that was absorbed to maintain medical mutual by taxpayers, but rather employees made the decision to absorb these additional costs. And they're fairly significant.
Do I hear a motion to approve item 3F? Mr. Jones?
Mr. President, I motion to approve item 3F, medical mutual renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Do I hear a second? Mr. Murhar?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Murhar. Is there any discussion? No. Okay. Mr. Charnello?
Mr. Murhar?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Newyear?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Mr. Charnello?
Letter G is the Willoughby-Eastlake Public Library 2022 budget request. We have to pass this for the public library so they could take this to the county budget commission.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve item 3G? Mr.
Mr.
Roskis.
President, I will make a motion to approve item 3G, Willoughby-Eastlake Public Library 2022 budget request.
Thank you, Mr. Roskis. Do I hear a second?
Mr.
Mr. Jones? Mrs. Newyer?
I second that.
Thank you, Mrs. Newyer. Do I hear a discussion? Mr. Charnello?
Mr. Murhar?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. New Year?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Mr. Chernow.
Letter H, purchase orders and blanket certificates. We have a few invoices that exceed their purchase order by $3,000 or more. One is Medical Mutual Life Insurance. The second is the Compass Group USA, that is also known as Chartwells. They are the food service manager. Miscellaneous vendors for our College Credit Plus textbooks, and the City of Willoughby, and that is for our school resource officers. The second group is then and now certificates. That is when the invoice is dated prior to the purchase order being in place. So the first is the Lake County YMCA. That is for the South High School signage and janitorial supplies. Love Agency. That is for our second installment of the property and casualty insurance. And City of Willoughby, also for school resource officers. And lastly, blanket certificates of $50,000 or more. Tierney Brothers, as for the NCI Eastlake Smartboard and Hovercam. Love Insurance, that is for the property and casualty insurance. And Midwest Manufacturing Resources for the CCA Mini Mill Education Simulator.
Hey, Nick. On the CCP textbook line,
Mhm.
the increase amount doesn't seem to match up with the PO and invoice amount.
That was showing the invoice that put it over, so there was still some left on the purchase order, so.
Got it.
Yeah, it was, there was multiple invoices, so that just happened to, the overage was not quite, they don't quite match up.
Okay, thank you.
Am I speaking that correctly, Kathy?
Yeah.
All right. Just making sure. Trust but verify. Establishment of new accounts. We're establishing a new account for North High School. That is for Consumer Science Department, Music Department, and Science Department. We're also doing one for South High School. This is tied in with our donations. We received an anonymous donation, and each school is receiving $15,000.
And that's from a person who shall remain obviously anonymous, hence
Yes.
the anonymous donation, but this is just from one individual.
One
who-
individual.
Who walked in and cut you out a check.
Yes, and it was accidentally cut to me, and I had to send her back to go.
Sure, Nick, we'll buy that.
I'm just saying.
We'll go with that one.
Turn around and send her back to the bank. Yes, we were very appreciative and thankful for that donation.
That's an amazing donation. It's gotta be one of the highest I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And then NCI Willoughby received a $24,000 donation for the welding department, and that is also in the donation section.
Great. Cool.
Letter J. This is tied in with all the fiscal 22 budget appropriations, so these are fiscal 22 budgets, purposes, and goals for all of our student activities. And these will continue to trickle in over the summer. So there are quite a few of them. And letter K, grant application acceptance. We received additional CARES funding for our adult ed program, so you have direct student aid and you have institutional aid. That's what those two grants are for. Letter L, our gifts and donations. We have a donation from Cindy Adams. She donated a 1996 Jeep bumper to NCI Willoughby's auto collision program.
A Jeep what?
The bumper.
It was
The
like
Jeep.
part of a car. I've never seen that before.
All right.
Well, you can practice on anything, I guess.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Absolutely.
know.
Number 2 is the Lake County Emergency Management donated PPE valued at $1,650. This consisted of 5 cases of isolation gowns, 6 cases of examination gloves, 200 disposable masks, 250 N95 masks, and 1 case of face shields to NCI Eastlake. Andrea Taylor Martinko donated various items valued at $432 to the North High School Drama Club. Michelle Green donated $500 to North High School Drama Club, and this will be used towards the cost of the Little Mermaid programs. Catherine and Edward Lozick Foundation donated $24,000 to the NCI Willoughby's welding program. And lastly, 6 and 7 are the anonymous donations that total $30,000 for Family and Consumer Science Departments, Music Department, and Science Department labs. And thank you to all those generous donors.
Yes. Okay, item 4 is the superintendent's resolutions. Before we go to those, I'd just like to say that one of the areas that as a board have felt important was the continuing education of our administrators, and that this past week, Dr. Thompson defended his dissertation and was awarded his PhD. Dr. Thompson.
Thank you. If time were used as a marker for how long it took, I probably took the longest in the history of anybody in education to finish, but at least it's finally over, so thank you. I just want to do a quick review of our strategic plan, what we're going to be focusing on, or what we present to you to focus on moving forward. And I think it's important to note that we actually started this process right before COVID hit, then COVID hit, and it put everything on pause, disrupted our groups that we had together. We eventually brought them back through a Zoom meeting, and that included parents, staff members, administrators, multiple business partners, people from the community, and school board members all came together to study this plan and put this plan together moving forward. So one of the things obviously we're trying to do is to prepare our graduates to meet the challenges of the 21st century. That's our mission. And as a team, we're focusing on delivering academic excellence and student wellness. That's important. Enhanced technology and digital innovation. And it's ironic that our new Director of Technology is here, who you'll meet a little bit later. Maintain efficient operations, safe environments, and do that all being fiscally responsible. Think about all the things that are on the plates of public schools today are pretty significant. Strengthen our community engagements and partnerships, build a collaborative culture. All of those things we're focusing on right now. Academic excellence and student wellness is the title or the topic, and underneath there, we're trying to create an environment that supports active student engagement and is consistent improvement in academic achievement. So what we're focusing on is increasing the relevance and rigor through implementation of Ohio's learning standards and align our curriculum. You heard that come through from our principals previously. It's also really important, if you're focusing on if you're doing a great job of teaching, but you're not focused on the actual curriculum that's tested, then the scores don't reflect what the students know. So it's critical that our staff stay aligned with the Ohio learning standards. Continue a comprehensive student-based assessment, and formative and summative assessments. Again, earlier you heard the principals echoing that. Evaluate curriculum, instruction, and assessment resources. Do we have the tools in our teachers' toolbox that they need to be successful? I would tell you that one of the underlying silver linings of COVID is our teachers are now very, very good. Our aides are very, very good at moving through that digital world and teaching in that realm to the best that they can. Now, that doesn't work for every student, for sure. I would say it's not the optimum situation for most students, but for some students it is. For some students it is. But if we're forced to go back there, we all hope and pray that that doesn't happen. But if it does, we're much better prepared moving forward. Provide students with learning opportunities and experiences relevant to STEM, and we're trying to push that STEM concept out of just soy. it works very well there, we know that, but we want to see that moving throughout the district more extensively. We have the equipment, for example, in South and North High School, so we're trying to expand those programs in those schools. We also have the mobile fabrication lab that some of your kids have had the opportunity to be a part of and be exposed to, so we're trying to move that forward. Career technical education. I'm a firm believer that not every student needs to go to college to be successful. You heard talk about our welding program. Do you know every single one of our welders gets hired way before the school year even ends of their senior year, and some of them make 6 figures right out of high school? I mean, it's pretty incredible what opportunities our kids have. And in the old model, if you went career tech, you didn't go to college, but that's not the case anymore either. So for example, our LPN program, our licensed practical nurse program, our students can go to our campus for 2 years, stay on our campus through an articulation agreement with Ursuline College, stay there 2 more years, and have their bachelor's degree in nursing after only paying for 2 years of that at about $10,000 a year. And those of you that have kids in college, you know that $10,000 a year wouldn't pay for the first semester at a state school, much less for an entire school year. And I don't think anyone would argue that nurses get hired as soon as they finish, or actually probably even before they finish, as soon as they pass their state boards. So, and to focus on higher education, careers, and citizenship, we want to refine and implement instructional framework that includes response to intervention. Response to intervention, if you don't know, response to intervention is students struggling. So we want to give them some intervention, just like it sounds. And there's 3 levels of intervention. Just because a student goes into intervention doesn't mean that they're going to become special education, or they are special, or they become special education on an IEP. It could, it's a pathway to get there, but it doesn't mean that you'll be put on one simply because you enter into that. Some of us just need, I don't know about you, but math was very difficult for me when I was a high school student. I'm fortunate I got through it, so I might have benefited from intervention, for example. So we're working on that, and we're modeling that to provide a multi-layered academic, behavioral, and social emotional support system for our kids. I think most people would agree, even though staff had a heck of a year, the administration had a heck of a year, who do you think probably had the worst year? Probably students, right? I mean, that was traumatic for many students, from sports to activities to their friends to just all those things that, and anybody here have a middle schooler or had a middle schooler? Is there anything more important than their friends when you're in middle school? And to be separated from them is a really big deal for them at that point in their lives. Provide support and services to the whole child in grades pre-K through 12 and ensure that each student is safe, engaged, healthy, both mentally and physically. And that goes all the way from their own personal mental health to the physical security of our buildings. As a reminder to folks, for example, we're putting the 3M material that you can't see on all the windows across our district. They're very difficult to break through. You can still break through it eventually, but it takes about 5 or 6 minutes to break through a window. Shooting through it, much less. It's very difficult to punch your way through it. Expand the district's current initiative on positive behavior interventions and supports through our PBIS programs. And as most of you are already aware, the board's certainly aware, we've won numerous awards for our PBIS programs in our buildings, and we continue to develop those and deliver educational programs and resources to assist families supporting students and home and school. We want to help in both places, and again, try to create a supportive, positive mental health support. There'll be a work session at the end of the month where we talk more about specifics about what at least some of our options might be in terms of a piece of that anyway. Operations, safety, and fiscal responsibility falls into a category, and specifically we're looking to maintain and enhance system-wide operations to ensure high standards, operational safety in all environments, and fiscal stability. So One of the things we want to make sure we're doing is effectively managing our finances, our resources, and all of our assets. Focus attention and diligence on short and long-term planning. So Nick has come. Nick is new to our district and has sincerely done an incredible job at the very beginning in finding ways for us to be fiscally responsible. And I will also give a lot of kudos to our unions, although they're tough and they push me around. They're very reasonable and rational in our contracts that you'll see coming up for approval. They're cognizant of the fact that we have to maintain fiscal stability and be fiscally responsible. Control long-term costs through operational efficiencies, just improving those efficiencies. One of the things we did, again, as most of you know, was put things that weren't always so sexy in some of our old buildings, like windows and doors and HVAC systems and roofs, but those have really driven down our operational costs as we're not, we're just more efficiently operating those buildings. Ensure effective maintenance of facilities, great segue. Improve policies, procedures, and infrastructure to address safety and daily operations of our district. So those are all things that we're working on in that category. Technology and digital information is obviously a real topic in all public schools, but we want to provide students and employees with the technology tools necessary to support instructional goals and effective operations. So when we went into COVID, I think we passed out how many Chromebooks, Patrick?
It was like 2,500 at the beginning.
In just a few days, like maybe a week. We moved out 2,500 Chromebooks and, I don't know, 400 or 500 hotspots to try and meet the needs of our students. We haven't recovered them all. We're still working on that, but our new technology director said that she will have them all back within 3 days. So I don't know, Patrick, what you're doing, but she says she's going to whip it right in shape. So we'll see. Prepare our students to be safe, responsible digital learners. You know, I could tell you story after story, especially if your kids are older. Maybe you missed there's a big difference between 2015 and even today, and where social media is and what kids are doing with their phones. And so it's shocking what good kids will do with their phones. And part of our responsibility is to help them be, they're creating digital footprints and they don't even know it. And that lasts forever. So that's something we're really focusing on. Complete our network infrastructure updates. That's a constant, ongoing thing. I would like to tell you I know what the heck it is, but he just tells me they're widgets and gears and...
They're really good widgets.
Yeah, really good widgets. But we've been working on that for quite some time. As you know, when Central Office burned down a few years ago, so did all of our servers, burned with that fire. Develop updated and end-user device refresh, which I think is just refreshing our computers. Isn't that the normal way to say that instead of, yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, well, all right. And updated Google to support that hardware. Utilize software management programs to monitor printing, paper usage, document storage, and central registration of documents. So that the number of clicks on photocopies makes a big difference in a district this size over the course of an entire school year. Explore open-ended educational resources in collaboration with the curriculum department. What that means is just things you can get on the internet instead of buying them, is what that means. Provide continued professional development and support for the use of technology. One of the things that public schools, the biggest mistake they most often make is they'll buy this really cool stuff and hand it to teachers, but they don't have any idea how to use it because we didn't professionally develop them. So that's really critical, not just our teachers, but the same with our secretarial support and all the other people that help make our schools run efficiently. If we don't train them, having those tools is ineffective. And we hope to develop a plan where we are one-to-one. And I know that you had experience in doing that in your previous district, so that will lend itself very well as you help us try and figure out how we do that moving forward. Sustain community engagement and partnerships. Underneath there, we want to strengthen those relationships between the district, the schools, and the community to broaden opportunities for student learning and staff development. One of the things we want to do is get our kids out in meaningful experiences. So for example, our kids in our LPN program are out doing clinical rotations. You know, we want to get our welders out in real world situations. We want to get as many of our students to have those types of experiences as we can at the earliest age that we can. So to expand those community partnerships, improve communication with students, parents, staff, and community members in general, and also about our strategic plan, what we're trying to do with our strategic plan. Mr. Murphy, I don't want you to fall asleep back there. So I'm going to ask you one question. What's the greatest challenge of being a school superintendent?
Effectively communicate.
It's very difficult. It's very, very difficult. How do you effectively communicate? And so it's a constant challenge. So we're working on that. Promote the availability of our district facilities. We have some really incredible facilities that you pay for them. You pay for them. You pay for them, actually. You haven't paid as if it's gone. We're still paying on it, right? It's a bond issue from 2015. You should be able to use those. And there's a lot of opportunities for that. So we're exploring that. Promote and provide access and resources that support the needs of families and the community. And then through collaboration, we want to create a culture of collaboration and shared accountability where employees and families are valued, supported, and invested in growth and academic excellence. So build staff capacity through professional learning communities. We're working on that to help them not only learn from outside people coming in or administrators, but from themselves as well. Recruit, retain, advance high-quality employees to maintain high-quality workforce. You've heard it all over. Lots and lots of places can't find people, can't find good employees. We're not, I don't mean just administrators or just teachers, but it's critical to have our custodial staff that's good, our maintenance staff that's good. You know how hard it is to find, how long it took us to find the HVAC repair guy? That took a long time to find someone who was qualified to do that. I think it took us almost 5 months to find a bus mechanic. So those positions are just as difficult or even more difficult to fill than even teaching positions. Continue to improve the evaluation process and increase employee effectiveness. Foster a culture of respect, professionalism, and collective efficacy among all staff. Promote employee health, wellness, and engagement. Ensure high quality and responsive customer service environment. You know, we want you to call. I'm sure people have had the experience, and there's nothing more frustrating than to call a business and get bounced around on their phone system. And I know we've done that to people too. So that's one of the things we want to improve upon. Online strategies, structures, and processes develop equity, inclusion, and a diversity plan. So we're working on that, and explore opportunities for increased collaboration with families. So that is an overview of our strategic plan. There is I believe it is a 5-page document that will be posted once the board approves it, or if they have any changes you want made before we approve it. That'll be out there for the community, and then we'll begin the process of trying to push this out into our community and into our staff. So, are there any questions about our strategic plan? Okay.
Do I hear a motion to approve item 4A and approve the strategic plan for 2021 through 2026? Yes, Mr. Mayor.
I'll make a motion to approve the strategic plan for 2021 through 2026.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do I hear a second?
Mr. President, I
Mr.
will
Ross?
second that motion.
Thank you. Do I hear discussion? Mr. Childs?
Mr. Merhart?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Newyear?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Dr. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. President. Item B for your consideration is the service agreement with Meta Solutions. And Patrick, can you give us just a quick overview of the reason for the switch to Meta and what Meta does for us?
Yeah, so EMIS is just the data that the district sends the state in regards to enrollment, types of, like, different subgroups of enrollment, testing data, that kind of thing. The state uses that data to do things like create our state report card, determine funding, little things like that. So, so it's really important that our data be accurate so we receive all the funding for each one of our students. So the reason we're switching from LGCA to Meta is because Meta supports PowerSchool, which LGCA does not, so it aligns better with our environment and our student information system. Additionally, Meta created this thing called cross-check that automatically checks our data for errors. So we're hoping that it's just another tool that will provide us with more accurate data at the state level. And they're also going to provide a dashboard for the superintendent that will let him see all of our enrollment and subgroups and that kind of data at his fingertips. So it should be a much nicer solution for us in the long run.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
Do I hear a motion to approve item 4B?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mrs. Newyear.
I move to approve item 4B, service agreement with, is it Meta
Yes,
Service
ma'am.
Solutions?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mrs. Newyear. Do I hear a second? Mr. Jones?
Mr. President, I second that motion.
Thank you. Do I hear any further discussion? Mr. Charnell?
Mr. Merhart?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Newyear?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Dr. Thompson?
Dr. Beal, thank you. Item C for your consideration is the 2021-22 membership in the Ohio High School Athletic Association, and essentially being a member in the Ohio High School Athletic Association is what allows our teams to participate in tournaments. And without being a member, you can't participate in the tournaments. So this is something we do every year.
Right. Do I hear a motion to approve item 4C?
Mr. President, I motion to approve item 4C, 2021-2022, membership in the Ohio High School Athletic Association.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Do I hear a second?
I will second it.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Is there any discussion? Mr. Chadella?
Mr. Merhart?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Newyear?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Dr. Thompson?
Thank you, Dr. Beal. Item D for your consideration is the ratification of a tentative agreement with the Willoughby-Eastlake Classified Professionals, or WESEP. So this is a 3-year contract with WESEP, and everything, I believe that everything's been included in your packet for as it relates to that contract. But if you have any questions, I'll do the best I can to answer them.
Is there a motion to approve item 4D, ratification of the tentative agreement with the Willoughby-Eastlake Classified Professionals? Do you hear that motion?
Mr. President, I
Mr.
will make a
Roskis.
motion to approve item 5D, ratification of the tentative agreement with the Willoughby-Eastlake Classified Professionals.
Thank you, Mr. Rasmus. Do I hear a second? Mrs.
I
Newyear?
will second that.
Thank you, Mrs. Newyear. Do I hear any discussion? Mr. Chadella?
Mr. Merhart?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Newyear?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson.
Dr. Beal, item E for your consideration is ratification of the tentative agreement with OPSI Local 159. That is primarily our food service workers.
Do I hear a motion to approve item 4E, ratification of the tentative agreement with OPSI Local 159?
Mr. President,
Mr. Jones?
I motion to approve item 4E, ratification of the tentative agreement with OPSI Local 159.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Do I hear a second?
I'll
Mr.
second the
Murray?
motion.
Thank you. There's a second. Any discussion? Mr. Chadella?
Mr. Merhart?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Newyear?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Dr. Thompson?
Thank you, Dr. Beal. Item F for the board's consideration is ratification, once again, of a tentative agreement with the Willoughby-Eastlake Teachers Association, or WIDA.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Do I hear a motion to approve item 4F, ratification of tentative agreement with the Willoughby-Eastlake Teachers Association? Yes,
Mr. President, I move to approve item 4F, ratification of the tentative agreement with the Willoughby-Eastlake Teachers Association.
Thank you, Mrs. Deere. Do I hear a second?
Mr. President, I
Mr.
will
Roskis.
second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Roskis. Do I hear any discussion? Mr. Channell?
Mr. Murhart?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Newyer?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Dr. Thompson?
You will note that there is one union left that's not on our agenda. So we have one more item that we're working through with that union. I anticipate that they'll be on next month's agenda. Obviously, that an agreement has to be reached first, but I'm pretty confident we're down to one item. Item G for your consideration is a memorandum of understanding between WIDA and the district. This is just how we count our Bridge to Success students. Once again, it was a collaboration between the administration and the union to best figure out what was best for our students and how to count those students. The contract didn't address it, and so this does.
Do I hear a motion to approve item 4G, memorandum of understanding between WIDA and the district? Mr. Roskis?
President, I will make a motion to approve item 4G, memorandum of understanding between WIDA and the district.
Thank you, Mr. Roskis. Do I hear a second?
Mr.
Mrs.
President,
Neer.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Neer. Do I hear discussion? Mr. Channell?
Mr. Murhart?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Newyer?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Dr. Thompson?
Thank you, Dr. Beal. And just for note, BTS, Bridge to Success, we've had over 1,000 kids graduate from high school that wouldn't have otherwise graduated from high school, most likely. So BTS has been it's been used for lots of things, from a student who just couldn't fit a class in and took a class that they couldn't fit in at North High School, for example, all the way to students who are sitting with 5 credits at the end of their junior year and not looking like they're going to graduate from high school. The item H for your consideration is the administrator salary schedule that you approve each year for 2021-22 school year.
Do I hear a motion to approve item 4H, administrative salary schedule for the 2021-2022 school year?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I motion to approve item 4H, administrator salary schedule for the 2021-2022 school year.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Do I hear a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Murhart. Do I hear any discussion?
Yes, so are there any updates to the schedule that
N-
are out of the norm?
No, there's for example, pay increases follow the same as all of our union contracts. So in this particular year, year one is a 0% pay increase. So that's what's reflected, and the administrators follow. And we've always done teachers first, because they're the largest body. I think most would agree that they drive the salaries, or the salary increases. The other unions generally take me-toos. They don't have to, but that's usually how it goes. And then the administration follows suit with all the other unions.
Thank you.
So that's what's reflected.
Any further discussion? Mr. Channell?
Mr. Murhart?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Newyer?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Dr. Thompson?
Thank you, Dr. Beal. Item I for your consideration is the special service agreements. These are with our LEAF program, for example. The LEAF program is an outside support organization that helps our parents fill out their FAFSAs and other documents they need for their kids to go to college. We're trying to knock down as many barriers as we can for kids that choose to go that pathway. And for families that have not gone to college themselves, I'm the first generation in my family to go to college. I didn't even know what a FAFSA was. And so those kids really need help in figuring and navigating all this out, and so do their parents, because they just haven't experienced it. So that's LEAF. The re-education program or agreement is with RE-ED, which is an outsourcing school we use, and a CARES autism program through Mentor is also, we do our best to keep all of our kids on campus, but sometimes we don't have the number of students that would make it even remotely cost effective to run those programs on our own campus.
That was special service agreements.
Yes.
Do I hear a motion to approve item 4J, special service agreements? Oh, that's part of the consent agenda.
Yes.
I believe we skipped item 4I.
Or did we?
Yeah.
I thought I just did 4I. I'm sorry.
Severance.
4I was what we just did, the
Okay.
special service agreements.
What I have here is adopting severance and agreement.
Yeah, I have an addition.
Okay, well, there goes
Adopting
paper. That's the
severance.
problem. I'm going old school with paper, and I'm paying for it. My apologies. Item I for your consideration is adopting severance agreement and release. This is the one we added at the last minute, isn't it, Mr. Murphy? Thank you, Mr. Murphy. No, it's not his fault. He told me it's my fault. This is an agreement, a separation agreement reached with the union and an employee.
Okay, thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve item 4I, adopting severance agreement and release? Mr. Ross.
Mr. President, I will make a motion to approve item 4I, adopting severance agreement and release.
Thank you, Mr. Roskus. Do I hear a second? Mr. Merhar?
I will second the motion.
Thank you. Is there a discussion? Mr. Chow?
Mr. Merhar?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. New Year?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Okay, so we've gone past 4J, so now item 4K, Dr. Thompson.
Can you pull it up on yours? The
Performing
performing
arts.
arts, okay, thank
So
you.
we're back on schedule.
So it's K, this is K.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Item K for your approval, Dr. Beal, and the board's approval is the Performing Arts Center. It's the PAC rental fees and guidelines as we're hopefully putting COVID in the rearview mirror and opening up our theater. There are requests to rent it, as you can imagine. And what we need to do is, we're not trying to generate significant revenue from rental, and we have a different dollar amount if you're a resident nonprofit or you're a for-profit in or out of the district. So there are different guidelines for you to take a look at, but the idea is that we recover enough money, of course, to cover our custodial fees and then wear and tear on the theater so that we can have a sinking fund and make sure we maintain the theater.
Great, thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve item 4K, the Performing Arts Center rental fees and guidelines?
Doesn't have to, it's part of the
Oh,
consent.
consent agenda, I'm sorry.
We're on a roll.
Yes. So item 4L.
4L is the 2021 co-curricular fee schedule, and that is unchanged. We did not increase our fees.
Good.
Item M for your consideration is the 2021-22 College Credit Plus MOU addendum, and this particular one is with Cuyahoga Community College District and Lakeland Community College. Item N for your consideration is a parent-guardian transportation agreement, and what that is there are times when it becomes impractical for a bus to transport a student, and a parent will take in lieu of payment for lack of transportation. That's baked in statute, and we do that virtually every year. And the final agenda item for today is O. It's the personnel agenda, and included in these folks are everyone is pending employment based on satisfactory records from the Bureau of Criminal Identification and Investigation, the Ohio Department of Education, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. But one person I want to point out, Andrea, and I'll make sure I say this right, Trident, Trident.
That's correct.
Okay, Trident, thank you. Andrea comes to us from Champion Schools. She will take over for Patrick McKinney in our technology department. We'll certainly miss Patrick, and Patrick's done a lot of amazing things for us, but we expect the same from Andrea as she moves forward. And one of the areas that impressed us the most in her interview was her experience in bringing in one-to-one technology, and her expertise, amongst other areas, lies in her understanding of how to implement technology at the point of instruction. So she's very, very strong in that area, so she will come in, I believe, tomorrow.
I'll be in on Wednesday and Thursday.
Wednesday and Thursday for some transition days, working with Patrick. And she has a master's degree from, I believe it's Bowling Green State University. Yes, Bowling Green's her master's, her undergraduate's Mercyhurst. So she comes to us fully prepared for this position and with the experience needed to come in and hit the ground running. And we'll, as you saw, there's a lot of things on the wall for you to do on our strategic plan. So you will be busy, so welcome to the district. Provided they say yes. They gotta say yes.
Okay, next is the meeting notification. Our next regularly scheduled meeting of the Willoughby-Eastlake City Schools Board of Education will be July 12th, 2021 at 7 p.m. here on the first floor of the Willoughby-Eastlake Board of Education. Do I hear item 6A is the adoption of the consent calendar? Do I hear a motion to adopt the consent calendar? Ms. Roskis?
Mr. President, I will make a motion to adopt item 6A, the consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Roskis. Do I hear a second?
Mr. President,
Mr. Jones?
I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you. Do I hear discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Charnell?
Mr. Murhart?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. New Year?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Thank you. Before our final agenda item closing, I would just like to apologize to the board and to the community. I did not handle all the portions of the meeting last month as well as I would like, and I will strive to do better. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. New Year. Do I hear a second? Mr.
Second.
Murray? Thank you. Do I hear discussion? Mr. Charnell?
Mr. Murhart?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. New Year?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
You're adjourned at 8:18 p.m.
Thank you.